Hey, how's everyone doing? I hope you are all well. I watch a lot of horror movies, slasher, possession films, cult classics, you name it. But none of them really stuck with me. That genuine fear, it's rare these days. But then I watched and it hit differently. It's not just the blood and gore, though there is plenty of that. It's the emotional violence beneath the surface. The kind of horror that doesn't just make you flinch, it sticks with you. The Philippou brothers are true filmmakers, people who are trying to keep the genre alive. They didn't start as big shots, they worked their way up, carving a path through short films on YouTube before breaking into the mainstream with Talk to Me. They showed us that if you dream big, work hard and stay real, nothing's impossible. And even after making one of the best horror movies of 2022, they never let success cloud their authenticity. With Bring Her Back, they take their exploration of grief and loss even further. It's not the monsters that terrify us, it's the fear of losing someone, of watching them disappear into the abyss. The greatest horror of all is death and dealing with loss. Bring Her Back focuses on third stage of grief, bargaining, the desperate longing to speak to a lost loved one, to hear their voice one last time. When I was a kid, I was scared of monsters and blood, but as I've grown, it's the idea of never seeing my loved ones again that haunts me the most. That's the real terror. The thought of losing them. Watching Laura descend into madness as she loses her grip on reality is chilling. Watching Piper and Andy struggle with the loss of their father is heartbreaking, especially when Piper, who's blind, needs help just to get to Laura's house. Laura's descent is marked by so many red flags that you can't help but wonder what kind of tragedy awaits them. Hands down, this is one of the best horror films I've seen this year. The more I watch it, the more I love it. In this video essay, we are going to dive into what makes Bring Her Back so powerful. We'll explore the themes of grief and loss, how it shapes the characters, the symbolism woven throughout, and all the hidden layers in this haunting film. So let's start with a quick plot summary to set the stage. The film opens with disturbing VHS tapes that introduce a ritual in unsettling detail. A woman is filming and the images are distorted, grainy and unsettling. A man hangs a woman and the ritual demands that the person about to be possessed must stay within this circle to complete this ceremony. These tapes play a significant role in understanding the events that unfold. But before we dive into their meaning, let me give you a quick rundown of the plot. After the tapes, we are introduced to Andy and Piper, step-siblings, trying to navigate their grief after the sudden death of their father. Piper is blind and the loss leaves them with no option but to leave their home and move into a foster home. With Andy still 3 months shy of turning 18, he can't legally become Piper's guardian, so they are placed with strangers. Wendy from the foster department assigns them to Laura's home. From the moment Andy and Piper step into Laura's house, there is something undeniably off about her. Laura herself has a strange, unhinged demeanor, and her obsession with her deceased daughter is evident. She lives with a boy named Oliver who appears malnourished and out of place. Laura never explicitly states that Oliver is her son. As the film progresses, we learn the truth. Oliver isn't her son at all. In fact, he's a kidnapped child brought into the house to play a crucial part in Laura's twisted ritual. The boy is part of her desperate attempt to resurrect her daughter, a daughter who tragically drowned in a pool, and even Oliver isn't his real name. Laura's obsession with her deceased daughter is disturbing. Now she sees in Piper a chance to bring her daughter back to life. She wants to replace her. Manipulating Piper, she works to isolate her from Andy, slowly pulling her into the twisted world of her grief. As the film progresses, Laura's intentions become clearer, but the question remains: will Andy and Piper survive? Will Laura succeed in completing the ritual and resurrecting her daughter? Who is Oliver? And what does the taxidermy dog in Laura's house really symbolize? What do the videotapes mean? And what role do the circles play in the larger story? In this essay, we'll explore all of that. But first, Let's dive into the tapes. The VHS tapes are essential to understanding the demonic ritual at the heart of bringing her back. They reveal a three-stage process that is as disturbing as it is twisted. The first stage involves the preservation of deceased body under the belief that the soul lingers for a time. The second stage introduces a living person who is possessed by a spirit, referred to as an angel in the tapes, but it's clear this is likely a demon. The possessed person enters a trance-like state plagued by hunger and trapped within certain marked boundaries. In the final stage, the possessed must consume the flesh of the deceased person, cannibalizing them to complete the ritual and bring them back to life. By now, we have discussed the crucial role of the videotapes in Bring Her Back, but something still lingers. Who made these tapes and how did Laura come into possession of them? There is no clear answer given in the film, but based on what we know about Laura, I have a theory that ties everything together, and it's one that you might just find compelling. As we have established, Laura was once a therapist with a foster department for 20 years. This fact is a key to understanding how she might have gotten her hands onto the tapes. Laura, before everything fell apart, was clearly skilled at manipulation. She had access to vulnerable children, those with complex histories, and kids who could easily be isolated and controlled. I believe that after the tragic death of her daughter, Laura, unable to cope with her loss, started seeking out these videotapes as a last-ditch effort to bring her daughter back. She didn't start out as a part of a ritual cult. Instead, she was someone who didn't know what else to do, someone who had lost everything. She became obsessed with these tapes, desperate to understand what had happened, how it worked, and if she could somehow replicate it. Over time, she became more and more consumed by this obsession. Watching the tapes, she tried to recreate the ritual step by step, but it's evident that she doesn't really understand what she's doing. She's just mimicking what she sees, thinking that if she gets the details right, she'll bring her daughter back from the dead. This is especially clear when we see her drawing circles around Oliver or attempting to replicate the steps in the ritual. When Oliver steps out of the circle with Andy, Laura's panic reveals she doesn't fully grasp the rules. She's just desperate to try anything. Even if she doesn't completely understand the magic she is attempting to invoke. Her effort to re-enter Oliver into the circle and her strange finger movements on his head are proof of her confusion and desperation. Now let's take this theory a step further. Laura wasn't just some helpless woman lost in grief. She was a calculated predator. What if Laura specifically targeted Andy and Piper, manipulating events so that they would end up in her home? Here's where it gets even more interesting and a bit darker. It suggested, though not directly shown, that Laura may have been responsible for the death of Piper's father. I know it sounds far-fetched, but let me explain. The death of Piper's father occurs in a locked bathroom, and we see closed locked doors throughout Laura's house. She keeps her daughter's body locked away, and even Oliver is kept locked up in a room. These locked spaces are her way of containing and controlling the things that are important to her. It's not hard to imagine that she might have found a way to use her knowledge and control to orchestrate Piper's father's death. It's not impossible. Now, why would she do that? Laura must have known that once Piper's father was gone, the two siblings would end up in a foster care. And who better to manipulate than the blind girl who could be easily molded into a replacement for her lost daughter? Not only that, but the fact that Piper is blind mirrors Laura's own situation, and that connection likely drove Laura's obsession with bringing her into her home. Laura didn't just want any child, she wanted one who could fill the void left by her daughter's death, and Piper, with her blindness, represented that connection in a way no other child could. I know this is a bold claim, but I think there's enough evidence in the film to suggest that Laura may have killed Piper's father. Here's why we don't get a clear explanation of how Piper's father died. The locked bathroom adds a layer of mystery. What's to say that Laura, knowing how to manipulate situation, didn't find a way to trap him? She has experience in controlling people and situations, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that she orchestrated the whole thing. After all, this is a woman who has already gone to extreme lengths to resurrect her daughter. She has already kidnapped a child and what not. Moreover, the way she isolates Piper is telling. Laura doesn't just let her and Andy coexist in her home as a normal foster siblings. No, she goes out of her way to drive a wedge between them. She manipulates Piper and isolates her from Andy, creating a sense of dependence that makes it easier for her to control Piper. This kind of behavior isn't the act of grieving mother, it's the act of a woman who's carefully plotting and executing a plan. But it doesn't stop there. Laura's manipulation runs deeper. She'll go to any length to resurrect her daughter, and her methods are as evil as they are calculated. Having worked with children for so long, Laura has perfected the art of manipulation. She knows exactly how to use them, how to break them down. One of the most disturbing scenes in the film is when she pees on Andy while he's sleeping, making him believe that he's wetting the bed, that there is something wrong with him. She makes him feel like he's losing control, further adding to his emotional turmoil. The truly sinister part though is when she then cleans up his mess, pretending to comfort him, reinforcing a narrative that something is wrong with him, while also isolating him further from his own self-worth. Right from the start, there are huge red flags about Laura. Her behavior at the funeral is almost impossible to ignore. She forces Andy to kiss his dead father on the lips. When he refuses, she kisses the father's dead body, a grotesque act, especially considering she never knew the man. It's not just a bizarre moment, it's loaded with deeper implications. It suggests that Laura's familiarity with the body goes beyond grief. It's almost like she knew this person, as if she shares an intimate connection with him. In fact, it hints at something much darker. She may have been the one responsible for Andy's father's death. The level of comfort with the corpse, the strange sense of connection, signals that Laura might have orchestrated the whole thing. It's not just about mourning, it's about control. After the funeral, her manipulation takes a new form. She gives alcohol to 2 underage kids. Not only does she flout the law, but she also certainly breaks down their resistance, making them easier to influence. It's as if she's pushing boundaries at every turn, creating an environment where she can control and manipulate them without resistance. How many red flags do we need before we realize the true depth of Laura's deceit?
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare.
Once Andy gets drunk, he confesses to Laura about the abuse he endured at the hands of his father. He talks about the beatings, the violence, and the emotional toll it took on him. And this is where Laura's manipulation becomes truly disturbing. She doesn't comfort him or help him heal. Instead, she uses his vulnerabilities against him. This is where my theory about Laura drugging Andy comes into play. I believe she's spiking his creatine mix or putting something in his food to sedate him. His erratic behavior, especially when he punches the wall in a moment of rage, seems to be an effect of drugs. It's clear that Andy's violence in this moment is out of character, something that's been induced by Laura's manipulation. There is a chilling scene when Andy never wakes up after Laura pours her urine on him. Not only is he unconscious, but she even opens his eyelids to unlock his phone. This isn't just negligence or random happenstance. Laura has taken control of his body, his mind. And when Wendy arrives for a check, Laura cleans the creatine powder, scrubbing away any trace of what she's done. She's trying to cover her tracks, to hide the fact that she's been drugging him. She knows exactly what she's doing, and it's all part of her plan. Why is she doing this? The reason becomes clear. Laura is trying to keep Andy out of the picture. If he's drugged and incapacitated, then it's easier for her to focus on Piper, to manipulate her into taking the place of her daughter. Piper, being isolated and more vulnerable, becomes the perfect target. Laura doesn't want Andy around because he's a threat to her control over Piper. She's also trying to frame Andy as being abusive, just like his father. By drugging him and making him act out violently, Laura is setting up a narrative where Andy is the problem, the danger. She even implies to Wendy that Andy's creatine mix is making him aggressive, suggesting he might be on steroids, which feeds into the stereotype of gym goers being violent. It's a brilliant manipulation. She's framing Andy as dangerous, isolating him from his sister, and painting herself as the only one who can protect her. There's an interesting layer to this too. Laura's implication that Andy is on steroids speaks to how society often judges people based on superficial traits, especially people who go to the gym. Protein, creatine, and steroids are often lumped together, and Laura uses this stereotype to her advantage. She knows that people will look at Andy, see him as someone who is big and physically intimidating, and immediately assume that his aggression is linked to the kind of muscle culture that's often associated with steroid use. This stereotype becomes another tool for Laura to manipulate the situation, shifting the blame onto Andy and away from her own manipulations. Now let's delve into the film's approach to violence, which caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting such graphic content, and the brutality that unfolds is jarring. Laura's manipulation of Oliver, in particular, is unsettling. As he struggles with his hunger, we witness his physical deterioration in a way that feels deeply disturbing. At one point, he consumes the remnants of things in his environment, but the most unsettling scenes involves him eating something connected to Laura's daughter. This crosses a line for me, and I personally find it hard to stomach violence involving children and animals. It's not a critique of the filmmakers, but something I simply can't embrace. Despite the graphic violence, it's Oliver's tragic fate that really sticks with me. He's just a child subjected to unimaginable circumstances. The way his life has been shaped by this experience leaves him permanently scarred. How can anyone go back to semblance of normal life after everything he's been through? By the end, I was relieved that Oliver survived, but I couldn't help but wonder how he would ever recover from this trauma. It's a stark reminder of the lasting impact of abuse. Andy's death was another shock. I had hoped for a climactic confrontation between him and Laura, especially given the earlier weightlifting scenes that seemed to signal a showdown. But instead, Andy's life is abruptly cut short when Laura runs him down with a car. It's a brutal, unexpected moment that shifts the narrative from the typical hero versus villain fight to a more unpredictable and grim reality. It's a reminder that sometimes there are no heroes, just the randomness of fate. Piper's fate, however, was more empowering. No one comes to her rescue. She has to save herself. In a film driven by grief and manipulation, Piper's ability to break free from Laura's control is a small but significant victory. She manages to escape the clutches of the woman who sought to replace her daughter, reclaiming her autonomy in the process. In the film's final act, Laura drowns herself with the body of her deceased daughter. This act symbolizes her transition from the bargaining stage of grief to acceptance. After all her efforts to resurrect her daughter, Laura finally comes to terms with the irreversible reality of death. It's a powerful depiction of the final painful step in the grieving process. The recurring circles throughout the film are symbolic of the cyclical nature of grief. Laura's obsessive use of circles mirrors her inability to break free from her mourning, while the film also suggests that the supernatural elements are tied to her emotional state. The connection between Laura's rituals and the manipulation of Oliver's serves as a reminder that grief can shape not only our emotions but our actions, sometimes leading us to do unthinkable things. Additionally, the supernatural presence, possibly linked to a devilish force, is shown to have the ability to mimic the dead. This power is demonstrated when Laura forces Oliver to consume hair from Andy and Piper's father. Shortly after, Andy sees a vision of his father's reflection and hears his voice. The devil's ability to impersonate the deceased adds another layer of horror, making the grieving characters more vulnerable as their emotional states blur the line between reality and the supernatural. The soundtrack is an interesting aspect of the film. Frequently, the music contrasts with the intensity of the scenes, creating a dissonance that enhances the unsettling atmosphere. While this approach works well for the most part, I do feel that the film could have benefited from a more airy and haunting score in certain scenes. A darker, more atmospheric background could have heightened the tension during some of the key moments. That said, the current music choices are still effective in creating a sense of unease. The performances across the cast were outstanding, with Sally Hawkins standing out in particular. Her portrayal of Laura is both complex and heart-wrenching. One of the most powerful moments in the film is when Laura comes to terms with her actions and Hawkins delivers a stunning emotional performance that highlights the character's tragic descent. Bring Her Back is one of the most compelling horror films I've seen in 2025. The Philippou brothers have crafted a story that delves into grief, loss, and obsession in a way that's both haunting and poignant. The violence, while unsettling, serves as a vehicle for the emotional turmoil of the characters, particularly Laura. The symbolism of grief, the tension, and the raw emotions all come together to create something deeply unsettling yet profoundly impactful. What makes this film stand out is how it blends the grotesque with the emotional, creating a layered narrative that explores the darkest side of human emotion. The themes of loss and the destructive power of grief are explored in a way that doesn't rely on traditional horror tropes, but instead uses them to underline the true horror of human vulnerability. The disturbing imagery of Oliver's action, particularly during the knife scene and the kitchen table, are shocking, not just for their grotesque nature, but for what they represent, the ultimate loss of humanity. These moments echo the emotional violence that underpins the whole film, making it all the more chilling. So that's my analysis of Bring Her Back. What do you think of the film? Were there any aspects that I missed or anything else you'd like to add? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.